Hello everybody and welcome back to the Commander Tribe Elder. Today we're going to go and do a complete deck tech of what's left of my Prismari Performance Precon deck. And I could tell you right now, it ain't much. First thing I did is cut a lot of the expensive stuff out, and I even cut the main commander. I went ahead and went with the secondary commander, which is Veyran, the voice of Duality. It's 1 blue and a red. It's a 2/2 Ifrit Wizard legendary creature. It has Magecraft, which is a new mechanic. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +1/+1 till the end of the turn. And Magecraft is just triggered on whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery. The effects afterward are what vary. It has a secondary ability, which does trigger the first ability. If you casting or copying an instant or sorcery spell causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And so that's kind of where I went. I took out all the expensive stuff and I went with a little bit more streamlined, cantrippy kind of deck. It went through a few iterations before I finally got it to where I liked it. But I think this is, I haven't had a chance to actually play test this, but I think this is exactly where I want it to be. Maybe a couple tweaks here and there. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and go over is the lands. I did keep the land base pretty much the same. It's 10 basic islands, 9 basic mountains, and 17 non-basic lands. And I'm just going to go ahead and rattle those off. First is Command Tower. We all know it. We all love it. Reliquary Tower. Trading Center. I like to, when I replace lands, make sure that they have at least a chance to come into play tapped. And this one does, as long as you have 2 or more opponents. This one I kept in just for the scry. It's Temple of Epiphany. I added the Mystic Sanctuary and the Dwarven Mine, the 2 lands from, oh gosh, the set with all the fairy tale stuff. Mystic Sanctuary is obviously in here to fetch or recur an instant or sorcery. Dwarven Mine is more for fluff. It works. There's a lot of mountains in here, and I get a creature off it if it comes into play untapped. Mirrored Landscape is a decent way of basically ramping. And then Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds for your searching. Also, Grixis Panorama, which will essentially do the same, except it costs 1 to do it. You tap it, sacrifice, search for a basic island, swamp, or a mountain. Put a battlefield tapped. We don't care about the swamp, but the other 2 hit it. So, and then another essentially scry land or island or land scry, and that's Ash Barrens. And I did leave in the 2 cycling lands, Forgotten Cave and Lonely Sandbar. The 2 that cost 1, I took the other 2 out. I added in a Shivan Reef, which deals a little bit damage to me, but it gives me the colors that I need, no problem. Cascading Bluffs, I love these lands that give you the option between the 2 that you need. And then I put in the 2 artifact lands. I thought there was a synergy that was going to work in here, and it doesn't. And I just said the heck with it and left them in there. If you want, replace these with basics, no problem. So that's my land base. It's 36 lands. The original precon came at 37. I deliberately cut 1 just because we're running a lot lower total mana value in the deck. It's a heck of a lot lower than what was in the original precon. So next is our Rant Package. It's 11 cards. Let's go ahead and throw him back here. We'll cover him later. First up is Mind Stone. It's 2. You could tap it, add a colors to your mana pool. You could pay 1, tap it, sacrifice, draw a card. Is it Signet? It's 2. Pay 1, tap, add a blue and a red to your mana pool. Arcane Signet. Tap it, add a color of your colors or your commander's color identity to your mana pool. This is a funny one. I played Modern a little bit before I played Commander. And this card was banned in Modern, and for some stupid reason I got it through my Thick Skull. It was banned in Commander too. And I got it in this precon, and I'm like, you mean I've been missing out on this little gem for how many years now because I thought it was banned? Yeah. Check your ban lists. It's Seething Song. It's 2 and a red. It gives you 5 red mana. Talisman of Creativity. It's 2 for an artifact. Tap it, add a colorless, or tap it and add a blue or a red, and it deals 1 damage to you. Soul Ring costs 1. Tap, add for 2 colorless. Mana Geyser is probably one of the big ones in here that's just a lot of fun. It's 3 red, red. Add a red mana for each tapped land your opponent's control. This can lead into some of the bigger creatures, and it can also trigger an infinite combo I didn't put in here, but when I do the description, I will include the complete deck list, and the combo will be in the sideboard. So it's expensive, but once you get it going, it just does its thing. And then I added in the Fire and Sky Diamonds. They each cost 2, and they enter the battlefield tapped and provide one of their respective colors to your mana pool. And the last 2 aren't rant per se, but they do the job. Goblin Electromancer, it's a blue and a red. It's a 2/2 Goblin Wizard. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And then Brawl, Chief of Compliance, it's 1 and a blue. It's a 1/3 Human Wizard. It is legendary. And instant and sorcery spells you cast 1 less to... Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. We do have a number of counter spells in here, so that second ability will come into play. Next is our draw. It might seem kind of thin, but we make up for it later. I'm sure you kind of know where this is going. The first one is Risk Factor. It's 2 and a blue, or 2 and a red. Target opponent may have Risk Factor, deal 4 damage to them. If that player doesn't, you draw 3 cards. And it has Jumpstart, which means you can cast this from your graveyard by discarding a card, in addition to paying its other costs, then exile this card. So you get 2 uses out of this, and only the really lowest of low won't let you draw cards, and they'll take the damage. No, I'm kidding. It's probably better to just take damage. But in either case, if they take the damage and lose the game, then yahoo. If not, and they decide, it's not worth it, then, you could do 4 or 8 damage to them. Either you're doing damage or you're going to be drawing some cards. So either way, I love it. And I like that it's target. You can pick on those people that have little life. They can still, since it's dealing damage and not paying for life, it's a little bit different mechanic. So they could take the damage and lose the game, kind of screw you out of your cards, but it's all good, which has happened to me before. Not with that card, but with a different card. Anyway, the next one is Treasure Cruise. It's 7 blue. It's got Delve. Each card you exile from your graveyard while casting this spell pays for 1, and then you draw 3 cards. So for 2, 3, maybe even 1, you can draw 3 cards. Really nice. Dig Through Time's got the same thing, the Delve on it. It's 6, it's blue, blue. Look at the top 7 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. I didn't include those in the cantrip area just because they're not necessarily going to be cheap, but they very well can be. This was a fun one that I decided to put in, and I had a lot of thought on this one. It's Minds Aglow, it's blue, and then it has an ability called Join Forces. And it says, starting with you, each player may pay any amount of mana. Each player draws X cards, where X is the total amount of mana paid this way. My thought process on this was, I'm going to have a bunch of things that trigger when I cast instants and sorceries. So if I cast a sorcery for a single blue mana, then I might get, 2 damage across the board, 2 to each player. I might get, a couple token creatures. I might increase the power and toughness of one of my creatures. I got an extra sorcery in the graveyard. I've done all this stuff for 1 mana. And you know what? I'm not going to put any mana into this. Because I think if you put even a single 1 into it, everybody's just going to be like, okay, I didn't do anything and I drew a card. But I think that if you just pay the blue and you don't pay anything on it, you've done what you're going to do. You've triggered all the stuff. You don't care about really drawing cards at the moment unless you're desperate. And which if you are, you could certainly put mana into it. But you might be able to fool your opponents, because they'll go, oh wait, he didn't put anything into it. Well, I want to draw some cards. So they might put some mana into it. At least one player might. And if they don't, you've already accomplished what you're doing for a single blue mana. So I figured I'd let it run in the deck and see how it works. It's essentially a Gataxian Probe that doesn't draw anything or look at any cards. And this one's not draw per se, but I felt that it was a really good way to rip through the deck, and it basically draws you cards. It's called Future Sight. It's 2 blue, blue, blue. It's an enchantment, and you play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library. So if you haven't done your land drop that turn and you flip a land, you can play that land. Once you get your next land, you can't though, but if it's an instant or a sorcery or creature or enchantment or whatever, and it's still your turn, you can play that. If you're revealing a counter spell, yes, you've given up information, but everybody knows you've got it up there. So it's a really neat mechanic, and I love this card so much. And in a deck where I've reduced the casting cost of a lot of things, I feel that the 5 mana is definitely worth it. Next is Windfall. It's 2 and a blue. And each player discards their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. I love it because it's cheap and refills your hand. Yeah, it does to everybody else, but still, definitely worth it. Next is the removal package. This is 11 cards. The first one is Negate. I love these, by the way. Some of them look a little cheesy, but for the most part, I love these things. Anyway, it's Negate. It's 1 and a blue, instant, counter target non-creature spell. Next is Keep Safe. It's 1 and a blue, counter target spell that targets a permanent you control. Draw a card. Yes, there's a version that's 1 cheaper, but I put this one in because I get to draw the card. This one I hate this card. It's Arcane Denial. It counters a spell at the beginning of the next upkeep. Your opponent draws 2 cards, you draw 1 card. I hate giving advantage to your opponent. But in this deck, it's almost a good thing. A, you get a card back. So your opponent's only up 1 card on you. 2, it kind of might lead them into something else that you can counter. And with Brawl, we get that ability where we can kind of loot through our library a little bit. Next is Grave Shot. I don't have where you can infinitely storm in this, but if you cast 5 or 6 spells, what's the problem with it? It costs 1 and a red, it deals 1 damage to any target, and it does have that storm where however many spells you cast, so if you cast 5 spells before it, it'll do a total of 6 damage spread however you want. Next is Resculpt. It's 1 and a blue. It's an instant, exile target artifact or creature. Its controller creates a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. I had some thoughts on this one. I thought a 4/4 was a little heavy to hand to your player, but the creatures that are going to be in here are going to have a high power, so they're going to really think twice about hitting you with it. They might just send it over and say, you know what, it might get rid of that 10/3 Drake, and you know what, if it does, you trade a creature, and it's not a huge deal. We have other ways of winning with especially one particular creature, so it's not a huge deal. Next is Lightning Bolt Classic. It's a red for 3 damage to any target, and this has the same kind of possibility as some of the other cards in here, of being cast multiple times. Force of Negation, it's 1 blue blue. If it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay its mana cost. You counter target non-creature spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it to the owner's graveyard. Next is Shock. It deals 2 damage to any creature for a single red mana, and it's an instant. Reinterpret. It's 2 blue red for an instant counter target spell. You may cast a spell with an equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. And then a couple of classics. Chaos Warp. It's 2 and a red. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's permanent, they put it into the battlefield. Most of the time you get a land with this, so it's not a big deal. Pongify. They printed the living heck out of this card lately. I think it was in the Mystery Boosters a while back. It was in just a lot of stuff lately. I've got so many of these things now, I love it. It's a single blue mana, instant speed, destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. Its controller creates a 3/3 green ape creature token. So getting rid of those big creatures that are a hassle. Love Pongify. Next is the board wipes. I just kept the 2 board wipes that were in here. I want to establish a good board and rip through the deck, so I didn't add any to it. Aether Spouts, it's 3 blue blue. For an instant, each attacking creature its owner for each attacking creature its owner either puts on the top of their library or the bottom. And then Blasphemous Act, another classic, really good board wipe in red. It's 8 in a red. The spell costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield, and it does 13 damage to each creature. Yeah, it's only 2, but we probably could have put more in there. I was thinking about a couple others. I know there's like Evacuation, which hits attacking creatures also. Feel free to add them in. So this is where we kind of make up for our low draw spells. These are going to be our cantrips. Basically, it's 1 and 2 cast instants and sorceries that at the end of the day, it draws us a card or more. The first one is Deliberate. It's 1 and a blue, instant, scry 2, draw a card. That's how I like to do it. The next is Thrill Possibility. It's 1 and a red. As an additional cost to cast the spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards. Brainstorm. It's 1 for an instant, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. That can help out with the enchantment one. The Future Sight. Next one is Faithless Looting. It's a single red for a sorcery. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. It does have flashback for 2 in a red, so you could do it again. What would this deck be without Opt? It's a single red, scry 1, draw a card. Serum Visions. This one's backwards, but it still works. It's a single red for a sorcery, draw a card, then scry 2. Preordain shows it up. It's a single red for a sorcery, scry 2, then draw a card, the way you're supposed to do it. This is a really fun one. I love the design of this card. It's an expressive iteration. It's a blue and a red. It's a sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, 1 of them on the bottom of your library, and then exile 1 of them, and you can play the exile card. It's this weird synergy of everything that blue and red are doing as far as card draw, like the shuffling it under, the, what do they call it, the instinctive draw, where you put it into exile and you can play it that turn. Like, I've always hated the cards that are like, just pick 1 and stick the other 4 on the bottom of your library. It's like, what if I want to use one of those? And this one you get to use 2 out of 3 of them. So that's really cool. Desperate Ravings, it's 1 in a red. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card at random. And it does have flashback, so you can do it again for 2 in a blue. Strategic Planning, it's 1 in a blue. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Ponder, it's a single blue. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. You may shuffle, so if you don't like the 3, you can get rid of them. And then draw a card. And of course, Gitaxian Probe. It has a single Phyrexian blue mana, which just means you can either pay a single blue or 2 life to cast it. Pay the 2 life. And then you look at target player's hand and then draw a card. Next up is basically the meat and potatoes of the deck. It's 13 deep. It's our cast triggers and things that benefit us from having a lot of instants and sorceries in our graveyard. And in some cases, even exile. So the first one is Jorian, Rune Diver. I have to be honest, I didn't even know this card existed until I had to look online. I kind of cheated on this one card. So it's 1 blue and a red. It's a 2/3. It's a Merfolk Wizard. It is a legendary creature. Whenever you cast your second spell, each turn, draw a card. Stormkiln Artist. It's 3 and a red for 2/2 Dwarf Shaman. It gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. We don't really care about that. The part we do care about is this is some really cool ramp, especially if we have some other abilities, especially like our commander out, because then it could double up. But it has Magecraft. Whenever you cast an instant or a sorcery, create a treasure token. So it can ramp us pretty good. Next is Gutter Snipe. It's 2 and a red for 2/2 Goblin Shaman. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Gutter Snipe deals 2 damage to each opponent. Love those each abilities. Growl, Storm Conduit. It's 2 blue-red for a legendary Planeswalker. It has 4 loyalty counters when it comes in. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. You can plus 2 it to scry 1, and then you can minus 2 it to have its other ability kick in, which is whenever you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell, you may choose new targets for the copy. Next up is Firebrand Archer. It's 1 and a red. It's a 2/1 human archer. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Firebrand Archer deals 1 damage to each opponent. Talrand Sky Summoner. It's 2 blue for a 2/2 Merfolk Wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 blue Drake with flying. Archmage Emeritus. It's 2 blue for a 2/2 human wizard. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. Docent of Perfection. It's 3 blue for a 5/4. It is a insect horror. Whenever you cast or an instant or sorcery spell, put a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token into the battlefield. Then if you control 3 or more wizards, it turns into Docent of or the final iteration, which is a 5/6 flying Eldrazi insect. Wizards you control get +1/+2 and have flying, and it's still, if you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token into the battlefield. This is the card that makes the deck go kind of insane. I'm not going to explain it here because I don't have the time, but it's Carrick the Thumbless. It's 1 and a red. It's a 2/2 Goblin Wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, return that spell to its owner's hand. If you win the flip, copy that spell, and you may choose new targets for the copy. Off the hook when you're doubling that ability. Murmuring Mystic. It's 3 and a blue for a 1/5 human wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 blue bird illusion creature token with flying. Crackling Drake. It's blue, red for a star 4 Drake, flying. Its power is equal to the total number of instants and sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Sprite Dragon. It's blue-red for a 1/1 flying haste fairy dragon. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then Inferno Project, probably my favorite card from this pre-con. It's 6 and a red. It's a 0/0 trample elemental, and enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the total mana value of instants and sorceries in your graveyard. And we did do a couple of copy spells. The first one is Teach by Example. It's blue-red. Whenever you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, this turn, copy it. You may choose new targets. Increasing Vengeance. It's red for a instant, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. If it was cast from your graveyard, copy that spell twice instead. You may choose new targets for the copy. It does have flashback for 3 red. Naru, Mecha Master Wizard. It's 2 blue for a 3/3 human wizard. It is a legendary creature. It has flash. Whenever it enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Other wizards, which we do have quite a few of in here, get +1/+1. And then Wild Ricochet. It's 2 red. For an instant, choose new target for an instant or sorcery spell, and then copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. And I did add 4 utility cards, and that is Jaya Ballard. She was already in the deck. 2 red. For a Planeswalker, loyalty 5. +1 is add 3 red mana to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast instants or sorcery spells. You can +1 also to draw up to 3 cards. Discard up to 3 cards, then draw that many cards, and then its -8 is you get an emblem with you may cast instant and sorcery spells from your graveyard. If a spell was cast this way, would be put into your graveyard exile instead. Atali was also in the pre-con, which was awesome. It's 4 red for a legendary Elder Dinosaur. It's a 6/6. When it attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of those spells from among those cards without paying their mana costs. And I did put in, since there's a decent amount of artifacts, I put in the combo of Isochron Scepter, Dramatic Reversal. I can explain how that works later. But even if you don't get the Dramatic Reversal, Isochron Scepter is just beauty in this deck because of the number of cantrips that we have. If you can put, even a Lightning Bolt on a Isochron Scepter and deal 3 damage every turn to something, it's still retaining its value. Same with a Dramatic Reversal. If you just cast this one time, you do an all-out attack or something, and you do pretty well from it, and then untap. It's one of those things that you can lead in with a huge assault, and then you really don't get any crackback from it. So together they're really good. Separate, they're really good. Isochron Scepter is probably one of my favorite artifacts ever. Dramatic Reversal is just really cheap. It's 2 and a blue. Untap all non-land permanents you control, and then Isochron Scepter. It's 2 with imprint. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile an instant card with converted mana cost 2 or less. You pay 2, tap the Scepter, and then you copy the exile card, and then you cast it without paying its mana cost. So it also helps our commander because you're copying and casting with this one card. So that can lead to some crazy things too. In any case, that's the deck. Yeah, with just the Isochron Scepter, the Carrick, the Thumbless guy, you could just kind of go off the hook with some of this, rip through your library, hit with some of the beater creatures. You can do a go wide strategy. That's what I love about decks like this, is that it has that ability to both go wide and hit hard with a single target. With things like the Atali and the Inferno Project, and even the Drakes that are in here, bringing out the tokens, and it's all geared by those really cheap instants and sorceries. Anyhow, that's my reconstruction of the Prismari Performance deck. I will have other decks in the future from the Strixhaven precons. It took me a while to do this because of, let's just say, life technical difficulties. And I will have them out as soon as I possibly can. In any case, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.